think you're good. We are good. We're going back to the section on placement of reading marks, page LXIII, and we said that most of the Tameh HaMikra, most of the reading marks are placed on the letters that carry the accent of the word. However, there are some reading marks that have a fixed place, Tlisha Gdola or Yativ, which always appear at the beginning of the word. In fact, if the word has an accent on a different syllable, what you'll see is a Tlisha Gdola at the beginning of the word, and then a second Tlisha Gdola placed on the syllable that has the accent on it. So you'll see the word will have two of the same symbol on it in order to tell you that, number one, this is a Tlisha Gdola, and it has a position at the beginning of the word, and the second Tlisha will tell you where, in fact, that the accented syllable of the word is. And we will discuss later, when we discuss the names of each note and the functions of each note, why Tlisha Gdola appears at the beginning of a word. Similarly, there are notes that have a fixed position on the last syllable of the word, Tlisha Ktana and Zarka and Segol. And again, these notes might be doubled if the accent of the syllable if the accented syllable of the word is elsewhere in the word, not on the last syllable, where these have a traditional place of going.
But so two Tlisha Gdolas don't mean you don't sing it differently.
You don't sing it twice, you don't sing it differently. However, two Tlisha Gdolas, the accented syllable in the word will be where the second Tlisha Gdola is, and similarly two Tlisha Ktanas, the accented syllable will be where the first one is, not at the end of the word. If it is the first syllable that's being accented with a Tlisha Gdola, then you only need one. So the access occurrences with an aspect of timing in relation to causes and results by the respective positioning of the reading mark. The ta'amim will tell us whether a word is elongated, whether a word is truncated, whether a word is pronounced quickly or slowly. So that's another function that they have. Similarly, some notes will be doubled. So there are ones that are inherently doubled, like ger shayim, which are two strokes that sit right next to each other. And you will also see some combinations, kadma v'azla, that almost uniformly will go together. And you will also see some words that will have two pashtas on the word, and even though pashta doesn't have a fixed place on a particular syllable, the note sometimes will appear twice on a word, and again, the good doctor assigns meaning to the fact that the note is doubled.
What, like two pashtas mean?
So even though there's no difference in pronunciation, and even though there's no grammatical or traditional reason to put it at one end of the word, and therefore you got to put a second one on the accented syllable, when you have a word that has two pashtas on it, he will tell you that is a strengthening of the meaning of that word, that it's there, and it's there for force and for emphasis.
But that means you don't sing differently either, right?
It's not pronounced in any different way. There are also several instances in Torah and many of the rest of the Bible where two sets of reading marks are simultaneously quoted. So the most famous one is Aseret HaDibrot, which will have a tam elyon, an upper tone, and a lower tone, a tam tachton. The lower one is the one that you read in private if you're studying this for yourself, and the upper one is for public consumption. It is specifically for tifaret, for glory, to glorify the presentation of Aseret HaDibrot, and he brings in here a Kabbalistic concept. By another view, the lower markings, the tam tachton, reflects the exterior of the subject, and the upper, the tam elyon, conveys intimate understanding. And therefore, if we're going to be reading it in public, obviously we want to display our inner understanding of the subject, whereas when we're going through it ourselves, we want to look at it and examine it and turn it over. So we want to look at the exterior of the subject in order to gain deeper meaning when we're studying it by ourselves.
But in that case, shouldn't there really be a yarn tachton for the whole, not just for the Aseret HaDibrot? If that's the
When so the Sefer unfortunately only went through Breshit, so we really don't have any examples of Elyon and Tachton in Breshit, so we will not know what Dr. Seaman's thoughts on the matter were. I would suspect from his treatment of other notes and other facts where things are doubled that he would go through a complete linear discussion of what Tom Tachton teaches us and a complete linear discussion of what Tom Elyon would teach us, and they would be quite different messages actually, based on the extra meaning that the notes would assign to each of the words. So you would see more depth in that section because it has at least two interpretations that are defined as a pshat, defined as a simple instance of the way that you really need to understand it. The way that he divides out sentences and gives meaning to each sentence is each note might appear under one word, or might appear under a combination of two or even three words. So et asher might only have one note on it. So he makes the comment that with connecting words or adverbs like min and el and al and kol and et, sometimes these words will be joined to the next word and only have one note under it. So he phrases in his interlinear translation each of the groupings based on a reading mark, based on a Tam HaMikra, and doesn't separately interpret words that don't have their own note. We're on page LXIV, and he discusses here some of the characteristics of the notes, and again, he's going to discuss these characteristics because he's going to derive meaning from these various characteristics. So the first thing is we discussed in the previous session that some of the notes act as milachim, act as kings. And when the king comes, you pause and you wait for whatever he's going to do before you continue what you're doing. So these would be notes that would give us a complete stop in the action, and then we continue on. This has a couple of implications. It has an implication of letters that Beit Gimel Beged Kefet, Beit Gimel Daled, Kaf, Pei, and Tav that might have a dot in them grammatically or might not. If they have the letters Aleph, Hey, Vav, or Yud in front of them in the previous word, those letters will lose their dot. So instead of kol, you'll get chol. Instead of b, you'll get v. If it comes after one of these letters, Aleph, Hey, Yud, or Vav. However, if you have a melech, if you have a word that implies a complete stop that ends with an Aleph, Hey, or a Vav, or a Yud, and then you have another word with a beged kefet, with one note that should get, with one letter that should get a dot at the beginning of it, the melech stops the procession, and then you start a new thought. So therefore, that word doesn't lose its dot because we've stopped at the previous. There's a pause in the action. There's a comma or a semicolon or a period. That phrases our way of grouping the words, and it has implications in terms of both pronunciation, but also in terms of the strength or weakness of the word in front of it. The word that's pronounced with or without the dot. We have words that, we have notes that tell us that a grouping is going to come. So the note zarka always appears at least with a segol, so it's zarka segol and haftamatun. So zarka will at least have a segol after it. It might have a number of munachim, a number of stops in between. Munach, zarka, munach, segol. So it might have, or any combination thereof, but zarka is always going to lead us up to a segol at the end. So we know that these things are going to tell us that something more is going to come. They're going to lead into something else.
The Zarkaz is the
Similar,
S, right?
yes.
Right.
And we have Darga,
The-
which looks like a
shall
backwards
it
Z.
under- or whatever, yeah.
This note will always lead into either a Tavir or a Munach Ravi'i. So it again will tell us that something more is coming after it. So this is somebody who's leading a group, and he defines this as a chief. And these aren't his terms. These are terms that are quoted by many other sources throughout. And occasionally they will tell you that this note is a melech, or tell you that this note is a degel, is a banner. There are again Tameh HaMikra. There are reading marks that will emphasize a word or strengthen a word or make a word something that you will notice when it's sung. Pazer. Again, when you have a word that has that on top of it, quite obviously it's going to focus your attention on that word. It's going to mean that word is something that is drawing attention to it, and that category is called a banner, is called a flag, is something that is saying, notice me, notice me. Mm-hmm. And again, you have things that
He does not put there under banner. Where is Pazer here? Pazer is under trumpet.
Sorry, Pazer is a trumpet. You are right.
But the trumpet also announces.
So a degel is a minor trumpet, and a trumpet is a major emphasis of a word. You have minor emphases of words and major emphases of words. So banner, a degel is a pashtar, a kadma v'yazla, or a merchat tipcha.
But aren't they? You say trumpet trumps. That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
Trumpet trumps a banner. As far as
mm-hmm.
But aren't they going in descending order? Like kings, you think is the
No, it's categorization. It's not a descending order. There's no.
Chiefs. No, I
yeah.
think so. Okay.
And again, you have things that will end the phrase that a chief might have started. So a zarka will always end in a segol. A darga will end in a tavir. A sentence will end with a sof pasuk. So again, you have things that bring something to a conclusion. The second characteristics of notes that he's going to of reading marks that he's going to emphasize is whether the note is something that appears on top of a word or something below a word. Right. And again, he will occasionally draw implications about whether the word is in a sense pointing to something above or pointing to something below based on the actual position of the note. And the last characteristic he's going to speak about quite frequently in terms of notes is the actual shape of the notes. A revi'i looks like a diamond. It's placed on top of a word. A segol is 3 points in an equilateral triangle. It's a stable configuration. Katon is like a semicolon. It's 2 dots that's placed above a word, and he defines these as pointed. These are marks that will sort of define how the word is going to be interpreted, almost based on their shape. And again, we will see further examples of this with shalshelet and darga, things that seem to go in a chain, or things that seem to be going in a descending staircase, or pazer, something that starts from a very unstable base and goes up to a large flourish. We have so things that are straight, things that are angulated, things that are curved, things that are twisted, and we have things that are more than one symbol to create that reading mark. So he calls those combined. And I think we'll wait until we get into some text to see examples of what he really does with the actual shape of the note. So we're going now into a section where it says brief meaning of individual marks.
That's the
and
name of them.
You'll notice we're on page LXIV, the last paragraph. What he does is he gives it a number, and then right after that is the actual configuration of the reading mark. So mahapach, you'll notice that there's that less than sign. That's what a mahapach actually looks like. It appears underneath the word, and it is usually something that begins a phrase. You might have mahapach pashta zakev katon, or mahapach pashta katon, but it's usually something that leads into something else. So mahapach, which means to flip over, so it usually is leading into a new phrase. It's usually introducing a new idea. You're usually flipping over into a new concept or a new thought. And he says that this is a sign of systematic preparation of some events, because again it goes mahapach pashta katon or mahapach pashta zakev katon. It's something that's going to tell you that something is going to happen after it. So it's a preparation for what is going to come after it. It may merge several positions.
So like when they always say Vayihi is always, sadness. It's introducing something like Vayihi acharei advarim ha'ela. So you see that in words, what you're saying now in notes. I wouldn't be surprised to say,
but
Vayihi
usually does not have a mapach under it.
Really? But that's strange. Well, or whatever, yeah.
Would it characteristically have?
It would characteristically have either a tipcha, and maybe let's hang on to this until we've gone through this whole section, and then we'll come back. Remind me, we're going to come back to the word vayehi, and I'll tell you the notes that typically appear on the word vayehi, and we'll see why those notes are correct for it.
I can see us getting to a point that we'll so internalize what he's talking about that that'll be the true test, that we'll get a page without notes, and we'll, based on what we know, we'll be able to give the notes.
I just want the people who are listening to get the flow of this.
Okay, yeah.
So again, we've got the idea of ma'apach, which is something that's going to lead into a phrase that's going to go after it. It can sometimes start a new thought or a new idea. The shape looks like that less than sign, but don't forget we're reading Hebrew, so we're reading from the greater part going into the lesser part, and again we're emphasizing that shape. And what he says is it consists of numerous components and brings them close to a purpose. So when we look at this, it sort of looks like a funnel that's bringing what's coming before it into what's going to come after it. So we have a wide opening going into a narrow point. And he will often say that a word that has a mapach under it will be something that is starting from something broader or something that might be going before it, and focusing it down into something that is going to go after it.
Well, the Torah
again,
itself,
I don't want to get into examples right now. I want everybody to hear the complete section on the notes, because this is really the crux of what people are going to have to know to study this sefer.
But can I just make one point? The Torah itself is like a giant mapach, because the first two parts cover 2,000 years, and then all of the rest of the whole Torah focuses down on the Jewish people in the 40 years. So, you know what I'm saying? In that sense, the Torah is like a giant mapach, because it's going from the macro to the micro. I'm right. You know what, you understood what I said, right?
There can be analogies for each note. We see Bereshit. The word Bereshit has a tipcha, and when we get to tipcha, we'll see why that's appropriate. There is no note per se that is superior or all-encompassing. Each one of them has a particular set of functions, not a singular function, but a set of functions. So as we discussed with the mapach, it leads into something else. It might be introducing a new topic. It might be going from something wider and narrowing it down. So we're seeing all of those characteristics of the note, and depending on the word that it's on and the phrase that it's in and what comes before it and what comes after it, we'll see that note tells us flow.
There's some transition. It's some form of transition.
Pashta, from the word pashut, or simple, is an upward arcing, forward-pointing note that appears on top of a word. So it's number 2, and you'll see that mark, and it appears always on top of a word. It indicates an accent of an essential event, object, or personality. So it's going to take the noun that's underneath it, or the verb that's underneath it, and it's going to say that it's going to do something that is more characteristic of what that thing normally is. It's going to accent it in some way. which is a cause of an important result or action. It's going to always lead into another note. Pashta mapach, pashta zakef katon, or pashta katon. Pashta is always going to lead into something that's going to go after it. It can be the beginning of a phrase, or it can be in the middle of a phrase. And it's going to emphasize, and it's going to, again, tell you that as a function of the importance of that, then we get a consequence, then we get the next word or the next phrase that's going to have something important about it. Munach or zakef have the same symbol. It is an angular straight line down followed by a straight line across. Again, we're reading Hebrew, so we're reading right to left. So you see that there's sort of nothing before it, and then it's going to a continuation afterwards. It's got a wall, and then a continuation. So it's going to, again, be a connector. This is something that you will see leads up to something else, or is in the middle. It can be either the beginning or the middle of a phrase, but it's always leading up to something after it. Munach means arrest. Zakef means to stand up, erect. This is an aid accomplishing a king. Munach will come before one of the malachim. Munach revi. So munach will always lead into something, and it will tell you part of what the king, what the melech afterwards is doing it. It can also be part of zakef katon, even though it's got a different name. It's going to always fit with a katon after it in that phrase, but it will always look like that same munach. It just gets a different name when it goes with a katon, and it intimately connects with what's after it. He's telling us that it's formal, straight, and relaxed, well-behaved, retaining his low positions at all time. It never is something that will stand alone.
Like an enabler or
The butler.
a hamburger helper, yeah. It'd be interesting if the butler in the dream.
So occasionally there'll be something that comes before it. Occasionally there'll be something that comes after it. Sometimes you get more than one munach in a row. So occasionally he says it has a partner. You'll have more than one munach in a row. But if you have more than one in a row, each one of them will be separated by a pause. But you'll see a straight line if you're looking in a Tanakh or looking in a chumash that has vowels in it. You'll see that there's a definite pause. There's a straight line that will go in between the first word with the munach and the second word with the munach. Munach revi. And in fact, in most of the occasions where you have that phrase with the revi after it, the two munachim will have a little bit of a different intonation to them. And I'm not sure if that is only the tradition of the person who taught me, or whether that is a uniform tradition. But I've certainly heard Sephardi renditions, and those two munachim have a little bit of a different pronunciation. Again, I'm not a master of all different styles, so I don't want to comment further. Katon is...
Just before we go on, so with the zakef, it sits under the letter.
Always under the word, yes.
The cables are the same. No, it's the same.
It's the same shape, but when it's phrased together with a katon, it's called zakef. And when it's sitting there as a munach, it's going together with a revi'i or a pazer or a klisha or a gershayim. So it will be something that leads into something that is more of an accent, or it will be the middle parts of a phrase. Munach zarka, munach segol. So the munach will lead into the zarka, which will lead into another munach, which will lead into another segol.
it'd be interesting if the word Noach has a Munach under it, since it's from the same shore. So, you know what I mean? The word Munach comes from Noach. It's the same shore.
The notes have a little bit of the Tameh HaMikra have a little more fluid interpretation to them. Each time a reading mark appears, its context will define the characteristic that we're going to emphasize about it. Sometimes it's that it's leading into something else. Sometimes that it comes from a wall that you can't really go before, and then you're going to go on from there.
Noach is right there. You see,
but
the whole generation is wiped out.
The word Noach's name will appear in many different contexts, and sometimes that will be the thing that we want to emphasize, and sometimes we'll want to emphasize something else.
Right.
So there are very few words that I can think of that almost always have the same note.
Right.
Some of the numbers like shlishi will almost always have a revi on it.
That's funny.
It's by no means is there a single word that is always tied to a single note. So again, we're going to continue with the names of the notes and their meanings. We're up to number 5, Mercha. Mercha is a curved opening sequence. It is something that will always flow into something else. Usually it flows into a tipcha, but it can flow into a sof pasuk. So mercha, tipcha, mercha, sof pasuk. So mercha will usually flow into something else. So it's beginning. It's a soft beginning. So it's not the angular thing that we had with munach. It's a much more curved and smooth introduction into something else that is going to come after it.
Did you find out what mercha meant? Remember, you said you were going to. The word itself.
Yes, and I did not bring that piece of paper with me. I will tell you afterwards.
So what is the meaning difference between the munach and the mercha? As you say, they're both angular collectors for the following, what's going to happen next.
Mm-hmm.
And
but the munach is by its shape much more strict, much more formal.
Right.
It can sort of say that the thing before it almost wasn't there, and then it goes on. Whereas mercha is more of a soft sliding into what's coming, and it doesn't necessarily do a lot to deny or negate things that come before it. Whereas a munach might sometimes do that.
Like a semicolon might break up a sentence versus a period breaking it into 2 sentences?
More conceptually. It's saying that this word that has the munach after it is completely looking at you. When you look at the word before, we're sort of ignoring what happened before and going on. So it has that aspect of separation. Whereas mercha, by its gentle curve, doesn't do that. And again, this might seem a little esoteric until we get into reading some text, and I would encourage anybody listening to the tape to go through a couple of sections of text with us, and then go back to this and listen to this discussion again, and it'll make a lot more sense. So again, mercha is a collector in preparation of a future event, action, or purpose. And the mark goes below the word. The mercha is always found underneath the word. Tipcha, which unfortunately in my edition doesn't you can't see the note. It is the exact mirror opposite of the mercha. It is a slow collecting upwards in exact mirror fashion of what the mercha was. It always appears underneath the note. So it's a directional banner. It refers backwards. It tells us that something happened before it.
That must be a typo.
And it's I'm sure it's just a printing issue. It receives previous preparation. usually made by his frequent associate, the Mercha.
The word tipcha looks like a typo, so it's hinting that it's a typo.
And tipcha mapik is a tipcha placed under the first word of a sentence or on a start of an internal pattern. It refers to the essence of the marked word, the previous statement, which is frequently reflected in the text. We'll get to that again when we find examples in text. I don't want to go over that one in too much detail. It's number 7, et nachta.
Have we discussed number 4, katon?
Possibly we missed it. Okay, we're going to go back to number 4, katon. So again, after the zakef, we will have this note that appears like a